now is the time to be brave. If you want to change the way our organizations work overall, everywhere, we need to be brave. Take some risk, try something new, trust your people, and have the humility as a manager and as a leader to look at your own shortcomings and do anything you can to be a better manager.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of the peopleHum interview series. This is your host, Anushka at peopleHum. peopleHum is an end-to-end one-view integrated human capital management automation platform, the winner of the 2019 Global CODI Award for HCM that is specifically built for crafted employee experiences and the future of work. We run the peopleHum blog and video channel, which receives more than 400,000 visitors a year, and we also publish several interviews with well-known names globally every month. We have with us today Andrea. Andrea is an agile executive coach, agile enterprise coach, keynote speaker, and mentor. He aids executives, managers, leaders, and teams in large organizations, as well as in small companies, to move de facto in the 21st century and improve their business capability by adopting modern approaches to value generation and to teamwork. We have so much to learn from Andrea today. We can't here to learn more about it. Thank you so much for taking out the time to join and talk to us today at peopleHum. And welcome to peopleHum.
Thank you very much, Anushka. It's actually great to be here, and I'm looking forward to have this conversation with you.
So, thank you. Yeah. Likewise. The pleasure is absolutely ours, Andrea. So, diving right deep into the interview, you've been an independent consultant and a coach for over 25 years now, and that's absolutely commendable. So, I can imagine it must be an enriching experience, spanning across all kinds of leaders and organizations, big and small. So, can you just share a little bit about your journey and experiences you've had along the way?
Okay. Well, I must say that I had the privilege of doing the work that I really wanted to do. I come from information technology. I started in IT about 30 years ago, and I was developing software at first, but I always had a passion for sharing my knowledge with other people. So I was also giving a lot of training to people. And one thing that I've got from the information technology is the ability to abstract the problem. So to see the problem not just with your eyes, but behind what the problem really is. And at the same time, I was becoming more and more interested in how come that certain teams or certain organizations, even though apparently they start from the same background, they have the same context more or less, some organizations are able to perform and innovate and engage their people much better than other organizations. So that at the same time, more or less, that was 20 years ago, more or less, I moved to the United States. I'm from Italy originally. Now I'm back in Italy, but I moved to the United States in 1999. And I had the pleasure of working with some great people in the industry. So I started becoming more and more interested in this agile approach and agility way of working. Then I've moved back to Italy a few years later. And I became more interested in people than information technology. So that's long story short, I became more interested in the human organizational dynamics than in the information technology and computers per se. I took different approaches to agile coaching. I took classes, so I have a couple of certifications in coaching. Not agile coaching. And the more I worked with organizations as an independent consultant, the more challenging the problems that I was facing started to be. So it's one thing when you work with a single team, for instance. It's a whole different thing when you work with multiple teams at the same time on the same project. So you have all the scalability issues of the way the company is organized. It's a different thing if you work with technical people, but then at the same time, you need to work with business people because the interaction between business and technology is what makes your company successful. So basically my area of expertise, of interest, and my area of influence in organizations expanded progressively. And so now I work more or less with all levels in organization. I work with the CEO sometimes. I work with project teams. I work with entire departments. I have a lot of passion for what leadership means in this kind of adaptive organizations. So I work with leaders, but I also work with teams, with technical people, and not only in software, of course. One of my clients at the moment is a gas and oil company. So what they do is they make components for extracting and distributing gas and oil. So it's definitely not IT. So that's it. I mean, stop me because I could keep going for hours.
No, this is not boring at all, and it's completely on you. I loved how you have had such a phenomenal journey, Andrea, and it's just so wonderful to listen how you started in one sector and eventually branched out and upskill yourselves in the business and the technical aspect. So that's great, and thank you for that really enlightening answer.
You're very welcome. That's the thing about me being a freelance. I've always been a freelance my entire life. And the reason is I like the autonomy to make my journey as it goes, not to decide which turns to take as I go. And even though being a freelance sometimes is a bit more inconvenient than working in an organization, that's the way I like to live, basically. So the autonomy is a great thing for me.
Wow, that's wonderful. So it's just taking one day at a time and going with the flow.
Yeah, and also have a dream.
Right, right. Thank you for that reply, Andrea. That was really lovely. So going on to the next question, you've mentioned that you hold expertise in, and you also practice agile coaching. And agile coaching as a concept is definitely the need of the hour, especially with the pandemic. So could you speak a little more about this concept for our audience who might be able to benefit from it in the future?
Of course. Now, agile coaching is it's a bit of a confused area at the moment, and because it's a kind of a new profession. Um, so sometimes you find people who claim to be agile coach because they took a couple of Scrum Master classes and now they try to help teams to do something. But the thing is, there is a difference between training, consulting, and coaching. Now, training is when you help someone learn faster because you provide them with information in a certain way. Consulting is when people have a problem and they ask for your advice, for your counsel. So you try to answer and provide a solution. And coaching is neither of them, even though it includes a part of training and a part of consulting. But coaching is all about um, activating the resources in individuals and in teams, is about developing the resources of the people, the resources that they already have. So, I mean, like a sport coach, right? A sport coach is not necessarily playing the game for the athletes. At the same time, is helping the athletes to develop their potential. And that's what coaching is all about, developing potential. Now, what does it mean to develop potential in Agile? That's an interesting question, because you can develop the potential of a single individual, especially in their ability to deal with complexity and uncertainty, because agility is one way of saying it, but being adaptive is another, is a synonym. So when you're agile, it's because you're able to adapt kind of easily and rapidly to changing conditions. But that means that you live in an uncertain context. And for some people, dealing with uncertainty is not so easy. So it could be helping an individual to learn to deal intelligently with uncertainty, or it could be the development of certain relational skills, because in Agile, we tend to think at organizations as an organism, not as a machine. In the Industrial Revolution, we used to think at the organization as a machine for producing something, and people in the machine needed to be managed and controlled and directed. But agile organizations live more on the metaphor of an organism that is able to adapt and evolve with its environment. So for this to happen, the individuals in the organization need to be able to interact and communicate as if they were, brain cells that need to interact with other brain cells. And that happens if you can develop the soft skills in people, including the skills for accepting diversity or managing conflict or difference of opinions and so on, because you can innovate only if you're able to integrate different perspectives and if you're not too much attached to your own perspective of the world, for instance. So that's one part of coaching. There could be coaching regarding the processes that we use in Agile to be more adaptive, like basing our work on constant feedback, which is another good principle. Or it could be team coaching, or it could be sometimes, which means developing the potential of a team. And in some teams, for instance, one of the challenges is to have what is called a psychological safety for everyone to be able to contribute freely, even when they dissent from other people. So that's another thing. Or it could be executive coaching, which means helping managers and leaders to develop a different approach to the way they influence the organization so that they delegate more, they help people to grow rather than controlling people, and then they create a safe environment for everyone. So there are many different aspects to Agile coaching, and there's not a clear definition at the moment. There's also probably different levels of expertise. Sometimes you just need a good Agile coach that can help a team become more effective in what they do, and that's enough for you. Or sometimes you need some kind of organizational coaching, which means you need to work with different departments and different managers and stuff like that. So that's what it is at the moment.
Wow, that was great. That was such an exhaustive answer, and you raised certain really noteworthy points, Andrea. So, especially, I don't think another influencer has really differentiated training, consulting, and coaching for us. So that was a really fresh perspective, and I love how you actually explain more about agile coaching and how it's the need of the hour to be adaptive and resilient to manage and adapt to the changing times in the new normal better.
Yep.
So, Andrea, you've also helped you've helped companies, move de facto in the 21st century and improve their business capability. In that light, what do you think the future of work really looks like?
Nice question. So when I talk about helping organizations to move into the 21st century, what I'm talking about is that's kind of a catchphrase that I like to use. But what I really mean is to help people move from, actually not move, but integrate the mindset that we developed in organization during the Industrial Revolution with an approach that is more fit for the kind of challenges that we face today. The Industrial Revolution was a very important turning point in the history of organizations because we learned to industrialize what we do. But as I mentioned earlier, you industrialize something when you think at your organization as a production machine. And the problem with production machines is that if they're able to anticipate the changes, so if you can change the machine before change happens, then you're staying competitive. But the world in which we live now, the 21st century, is a highly interconnected world, highly technological, fast-paced. So the challenges now are much more troublesome for traditional management because they have much more uncertainty that we did in the past. Now you could have a competitor on the other side of the planet. Maybe it's a small company, but they use the technology in a way that you don't, and they become a problem for you. They become a business problem for you. So being able to be adaptive as an organization means to be able to change rapidly. At the same time, you have the usual problems in organizations of keeping a certain level of quality. You have the cost issue, so you cannot spend too much. So when I talk about moving organizations into the 21st century, is about helping managers to develop a mindset that is more fit for what we call complexity thinking. And complexity is when you have to move and make decisions in an environment that is by definition volatile. So things don't stay there for a long time. It's uncertain, which means that it's not guaranteed that what you do will generate certain results. It's complex. That means that everything is interconnected and you do something in a certain area, but that maybe that has an effect that you cannot anticipate. And it's also ambiguous, which means that the kind of information that you receive as a manager could mean multiple different things. Still, we need to make decisions because no organization is able to evolve if they're not able to make decisions at any level, at the very strategic level, and also at the very operational level. So being able to make decision scientifically in a highly uncertain and volatile environment is what basically makes business agility. And well, I don't have the crystal ball, so it's hard for me to predict the future. However, I can see certain trends. It's clear that more and more our work, no, let me rephrase that. More and more organizations need to rely not only on their production capabilities, but also on their innovation capabilities. As I mentioned, I've been working with many different kind of companies. I mentioned this client, a gas and oil, but I've been working with finance, banks, insurances. I've been working with biomedical. I've been working with fashion. I've been working with very different kind of industries. Now, what is surprising is that even certain industries that are basically based on manufacturing, and so you would expect that what they do is kind of stable, even those organizations now realize the need to move and innovate faster than before. So the new way of working is a way of working in which your ability as an organization to innovate becomes a serious competitive advantage or disadvantage if you don't have it. And that means that you need to enable the collective intelligence of your people. So probably that's the biggest change that I'm seeing in the new way of working. We really need to leverage the potential and the intelligence and the creativity of all the people in the organization if you really want to stay competitive. And you can do that only if you create a culture in which respect, creativity, professionalism is embedded into the DNA of the organization. We are seeing more and more people working now from remote, for instance, not only because of the current situation, but because now it's possible. And that means that you can access talents or competencies that are not necessarily available in your geographical area. But that poses new challenges in terms of how you create a culture of collaboration with people you don't meet in person. That's an interesting, I don't have an answer at the moment, or maybe that could be a different topic, but that's definitely a challenge. So how can you create a bonding, a sense of belonging with people that you have never met in person? So that's an interesting question.
Wow, that was really nice. That was a very valuable insight you provided us with, Andrea. And I love how you actually said it's about having your values in place and leveraging on innovation and creativity and the humanness that really makes us. And Yeah, it's just to have the edge over others, probably, like get softwares and AI to do the monotonous routine work and leverage on more originality and innovation. That's great.
Thank you very much.
So going on to the fourth question, you've mentioned that a learning environment is really responsible for the success of organizations, both big and small. So how would you say leaders can create and foster this kind of learning environment?
Well, I mentioned psychological safety earlier, and psychological safety is a concept that is becoming more and more popular in certain coaching cultures or agile cultures. Google did a internal research project where they showed that psychological safety is one of the paramount, let's say, prerequisites for healthy teams and organizations. So then again, psychological safety is when you have a culture in which people feel safe to be themselves, to dissent, to point out problems, of course, respectfully, but they feel safe in doing that. They feel safe being different, basically. That's definitely one thing, because if you don't allow people the space to be different, all you have is compliant. You have people that are compliant to the organization, and that's not a very good learning environment. The other thing is create as many moments for sharing knowledge as possible. With some of my clients, I suggested they create an internal book club, which means that there are books circulating, ebooks, and when people read some book, they usually then take like 15 minutes of their time to share what they've learned with their team, for instance. You can have a community of practice inside the organization, which means that you can create, as a manager, you need to allow people to have like 1 hour per month or 1 hour every 2 weeks, where people doing the same kind of work can get together and share and learn from each other. So there are many, many ways of promoting a learning environment inside the organization. I think it's all based on understanding from a management point of view that you are investing, that the time you're allowing your people for learning is actually an investment for the organization. There is this old joke in our, environment that the CEO, the CFO asks the CEO, so what if we train a lot of people and then they leave? And the CEO replies, well, what if we don't train them and they stay, right? So it's an old joke, but there's a lot of wisdom there. So learning is actually Peter Senge said like 20 years ago that on the long term, the only real competitive advantage of your organization is your ability to learn faster than your competition. And Daniel Ek, the founder of Spotify, once said that the reason why they became so successful and so rapidly is because their intent is to make mistakes faster than anybody else, which means we want to learn faster than anybody else. Okay, so it's a very good investment. So to managers, I can tell, just go for it. Invest some time of your people to promote learning. It pays back.
Absolutely. That was such an interesting response. And I love how you gave the example of the internal book club that can actually help sharing of knowledge and many other ways in which knowledge can be shared. And we can always constantly be on this journey of learning since there's no start and end point. We're all in a journey. Right. And that was a really well curated response, Andrea. Thank you so much for that. So, just to kind of wrap this interview up, do you have any passing remarks you'd like to leave our audience with?
Probably, if I were to give a small piece of advice, is be brave. now is the time to be brave. If you want to change the way our organizations work overall, everywhere, we need to be brave. Take some risk, try something new, trust your people, um, and have the humility as a manager and as a leader to look at your own shortcomings and do anything you can to be a better manager. So.
Wow, that was some really positive and inspiring advice from your end. Thank you so much. I'm sure our audience are greatly going to benefit from this interview. And absolutely, I agree with you on the fact that it's imperative to be brave and be courageous now more than ever in this period of utmost uncertainty. So, yes, completely, thoroughly agree with you on that. Thank you so much, Andrea.
It
It
was a
was
really pleasure. Thank you.
likewise, likewise. I really had a fun time interviewing you, gained lots of fresh perspectives, and I'm really hoping to do a second lap of this sometime in the future.
That'd be great. I'd love to do that.